Hey, what is up, everyone? It's the guy here, and welcome back to another episode of Themindhere, the bi-weekly podcast where I talk about new knowledge I've learned, projects I'm currently working on, and current events. Topics may be random, but I hope that with each episode you can come away with a fresh perspective on the universe. Welcome to all of you who are here for the first time. If you like my content and want to see more, please consider subscribing. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you may notice that I have a new audio setup. And if you are listening to this, you might hear the difference between this episode and past episodes. And the new audio setup I have now is I'm using a blue Snowball instead of the purple Panda lavalier mic. So I have a mic stand now. The main reason why I switched over was because I got myself a mic stand. Before, I only had the default tripod that came with the blue Snowball upon purchase, and that didn't work well for the podcast setup. So I decided to opt for the purple Panda lavalier because that one, the lavalier mic could be clipped on and it could be pretty hidden out of sight, but the video setup would still be optimal. And I also had in mind the idea that since I was going to go to college, that it would be more portable. However, at the moment, I have at least several months to get myself ready for college, and within this time frame, I thought this would be a good use of my time and my money to get a mic setup like this. That and the fact that I think this is a relatively portable setup. I could bring this setup to my college dorm and it would still be worth it. Might be a little excessive compared to normal college needs, but I plan to continue this throughout my years at college. So this I thought was a good investment. Now, diving into some of the new things that I was learning this week. This week, I focused on finishing a project management course that I bought on Udemy. It talked about the various principles of project management. The course itself was supposed to be for preparation for the PMP exam, the Project Management Professional exam, the exam given by the Project Management Institute. PMI, and it's a pretty official exam, but I wasn't planning to take it, mostly because it requires me to have had years of experience managing projects, and I don't have that experience, but I do want to be able to apply the principles of project management, and since this course was on sale on Udemy, I decided to buy it and take a look and absorb some information. And one of the more valuable pieces of information that I got from this course was the difference in the ideas between predictive projects and agile projects. You might have heard of these terms before, but to give a brief rundown, predictive projects are projects where the goals of the project, the customer requirements, they are pretty well defined, and you are in an environment where things don't change as much. And a typical example that was given throughout the course was in construction, where you are given you're given some requirements for the house that you want to build or a building you need to build, and there are heavy regulatory restrictions to make sure you're building something that is safe, and things don't tend to change, so you can plan out the entire course of the project starting from, let's say, laying the foundation all the way to painting and all of that. So that is a predictive project where you can have things laid out and planned out pretty much entirely, whereas agile projects are a little different, where the ideas, the requirements are starting from a more higher level and sort of vague level, and you sort of work as you go, defining things smaller and smaller, and you interact with the stakeholders of the project, the customer, providing iterations. That's one way to handle agile projects, is to go through iterations and show the customer what you've built so far. And this is Agile projects originally stemmed from software projects where you could pretty rapidly build up prototypes and then use those prototypes to get feedback and then continue to build on that. But the idea has sort of expanded from just software projects to a lot of other projects, especially since a lot of industries today are innovating pretty rapidly and changing quite frequently. So the predictive environment is no longer true in most industries. If you think about it, even something like construction, there might be some pretty rapid improvements in how you would, in the technologies that you can use, and et cetera, et cetera. So using a predictive model wouldn't be appropriate because you can't plan out the entire thing. The whole plan would change too rapidly for you to plan out too far into the future, because then the plan is pretty much useless because there's a low chance that you would be following the plan by then. But instead, you would sort of have a set amount of time and maybe budget to work with, but then you would try to get as much done as possible during that time, and you would start with the most valuable and most critical pieces of the project first, and then work your way down the requirements to build up a functioning prototype or a functioning product as soon as possible. So the difference between agile and predictive, in summary, is that the predictive one is one where you can plan out ahead, and where typically the scope of the project or what should be done is fixed, and the time and the money is something that you change in order to get and meet that scope. On the other hand, agile projects are projects where you have typically a set amount of time and resources, but then you change that scope as you complete the project. And your goal is to finish a product and get something working as soon as possible. In a predictive project, the deliverable, the thing that you deliver at the end, or the multiple things that you deliver, the functioning product is only delivered at the very end, and there's really you don't get anything working out of it until you finish the entire project. For example, your house isn't really functional or worth anything until you get it completely done, basically. Whereas, let's say a software prototype, you can go on and add more features as long as you have that base product, the base working software working, then you can continue to add things on. So those are the differences, and why I think this is an important part of the project, of the project management course. Of course, it talked about how you would manage all of the project scope, the project budget, resources, schedule, all of that. The more administrative stuff, that's pretty important for someone to know about if you're going into more of looking into some management, or even just applying to yourself personally with how you manage your own things. However, agile, I think, was pretty critical because it represented somewhat of a shift in a mindset in how to approach things. In the predictive environment, you would have something that was already planned out for you, and you would have to follow that. And it doesn't reflect, I think, how society is today, with a lot of those changes coming into play, and just being able to deliver products with a working product as fast as possible. That is the goal of agile. So to have that there, I think that was pretty important. Now, one of the ideas that I was wrestling with throughout the week and was refining through my head was the difference between teachers, coaches, and mentors. Now, they sound very similar, and they are in some degree, but I wanted to make a separation there to remark on the special value that mentors have. And from how I define mentors. So let's start with teachers. Teachers, I see, are people who are able to compress down experience and knowledge to give them to you and be able to let you learn at a faster rate. So something that took an industry 40 years to develop, a really good teacher would be able to teach you within, let's say, a year in a course that gets you to really understand this and not need 40 years of industry experience to gain that knowledge there. So I see teachers as people who are able to provide you with the means of learning exponentially and accelerate your learning. Now, coaches, I see, are people who are able to motivate you and get you to get that driving force to get you to grow. So I separate that from teachers, as teachers are the ones that provide you with the means to do it. But if you don't have the motivation, then you won't be able to follow down the path, even if it's well laid out for you. And for coaches, I see as their role as being able to push you and provide you with the force to go down these paths. So you might have a good path laid out for you. You might be trailblazing a new path, but if you have that motivation and that energy to go down those paths, that is what a really good coach would allow you to do. And of course, the traditional senses of, or the not traditional, but the normal senses of what a teacher and a coach is, like your professors or your school teachers, your sports coaches, there are, of course, varying degrees of these mixed together within people, right? A track coach, for example, would need to teach you some things about your form or your ability to run, or something about your diet. They'd still need to have to teach you, but they'd also, for the most part, need a stronger degree of that coaching ability, that ability to motivate you to get through your workouts and to perform your best during meets. While teachers, on the other hand, they also need some degree of ability to motivate you, to get you to learn and get you to go down the different academic routes. But their, I think, more primary focus would be to look at how they're able to teach you, how they're able to get you to learn. So those are the two different aspects that I want to look at. And what about mentors then? This third category isn't a third category that is separate from teachers or coaches. But a mentor, I see, someone that is strongly versed in both teaching and coaching. So if someone is good at teaching and coaching you, then they can be able to selectively apply the motivation they need when they see it is fit for you to need that motivation, when you already have a good laid out path, and they're also able to show you the best way to learn something. So it's a combination of the both. Now, why is this important? It's because if you combine both the teaching and the coaching aspects into one person, then it's much easier than, say, to have someone that is purely a coach and purely a teacher to get you to learn a topic, right? Because then they'd have to sort of communicate with each other. They might have differing views on how to approach things. And while the teacher might be able to lay out the path for you, the coach would have to then work with you to go through the path that the other person has laid out. But if this is all in one person, then there is a synergistic ability for that person to draw knowledge from both areas and sort of guide you in a way that a teacher on their own, or a coach on their own, or even multiple people that are specialized in both areas might not be able to do by compared to someone that is very well versed in both, a mentor. And this is something that I thought of as I was thinking about ways for me to improve, and I reflected on the people in the past that had gotten me to where I am today. And I thought about my, of course, teachers and coaches. So those two came into mind. But then I also thought about mentors. And at first it was pretty fuzzy. Again, very similar. It was almost like just different context. You would call them teachers, mentors, or coaches. However, I then started to distinguish this to see if this was a good way to sort of categorize the different people that I took inspiration and learned from, right? And I found that I thought this was a decent way to categorize these different people. And when I think back, there are plenty of great teachers that I had who laid down the foundation for me to learn and grow in some area, right? They didn't necessarily apply the forces or the driving motivation to go down that path, but they laid out a good path for me to learn. And then there were coaches, people who gave me that motivation to go down whatever I wanted, whether or not it was well laid out or not. They gave me that driving motivation. But very few people in my life have been true mentors to me. I can only really think about one school teacher that was sort of a mentor to me, and I can also think of the mentor that I had during my internship. He was able to both teach me in the various industry and interpersonal skills and just the company policies and whatnot. He was able to teach me well, I felt, and he was able to sort of motivate me to get me through and to sort of guide me through, giving me that driving motivation, inspiration to get through the internship and to learn these various aspects. More on the coaching side than the teaching side, but I would still qualify him as a mentor because I thought he was very well versed in both of them. And the teacher that I had, he taught AP government, US government, and I felt that, of course, he was a little more on the teaching side, more well versed in the teaching than the coaching per se. However, I felt that he had a good amount of coaching and a strong amount of coaching enough to combine with that strong teaching ability to qualify as a mentor. So I truly thought that he was a mentor. And that's not to say that all the other people that I've learned from in the past were not stellar. There people who were significant teachers who were able to lay down the foundation in such a way that brought me insight. They might not have qualified as mentors, but that doesn't mean that they were any less than mentors. This is just an idea I was wrestling with to categorize the different people that I learned from, and helped me through to become the person I am today and become a better person in the future. So that was an idea I was thinking about. And when I reflect this to society on a whole in a broader sense, it's really rare to have a mentor in the way that I described, where they have a strong teaching ability and a strong coaching ability. And finding someone that is a true mentor, I feel like is something that is very well worth your time. And if it's someone that you have to sort of pay to mentor you, if you find someone that is truly good at mentoring, it's probably very well worth the investment into yourself. And I'm not sure that there is a strong sense of urgency from people these days to find someone that is a good mentor, or maybe they might not be looking for that specifically. They might, because before this, I obviously had that fuzzy distinction between teacher, coach, and mentor. But I feel like that maybe this distinction might be able to help with sort of selecting the best people to mentor you. So hopefully this helps you or gives you ideas for who might be a good mentor to you, who might be someone you want to follow and learn from. So these are just ideas that I had, and maybe they will help you. If they do, leave a comment down below and tell me how it goes. I'm eager to hear about them. Another issue that I've sort of noticed on the topic of mentors was the idea of experts, people who are specialized in a field that most people don't go down, or most people aren't interested in, or something. They have a certain niche of knowledge that most of the population don't. And why talk about experts in the current environment? I feel like from what I've seen, from what I've heard, from the sentiment that I feel at this current state and my current context in the United States, I feel that experts are not as trusted as before. There's a pretty strong distrust of experts. And that can come from both sides of it, whether you believe they should be trusted or whether you think that these experts aren't the so-called experts that they call themselves. For me, for example, I find that it's sad that climate experts aren't seen as someone that are people that are able to for some people, aren't seen as someone that they can trust to make statements or claims about the climate. However, I also don't think that most of the business analyst experts on the mainstream finance media are the experts that they really call themselves. Where they might be experts in finance, but I don't think that they are the experts in the financial realms that they truly are, and I feel that some of them don't really understand the business prospects of things, or maybe the fundamentals of why business exists, and focus too much on the money aspect of it. So those are some ideas you can think about and look at maybe how you might be distrusting some experts, or you might think that it's sad that some experts aren't being trusted. But either way, there is this lack of trust in experts that I feel like is sort of permeating through society today. And why do we have experts in the first place then? Why do we have people that specialize in some realm and we sort of just trust them to be the ones that make the decisions? Like doctors, for example. Why do we say, oh, you know what to do, you can prescribe me these and I will follow that? Why is that the case? The case here is that the reason why we do this, I think, is because we want to delegate some of that thinking to people that would be able to make the best decisions for us. So let's say you could take your time to learn about how to, learn about which medications you need and what are some signs and symptoms that you need to take care of. You could also then learn about how to plumb your own plumbing in your house or do your own electrical stuff. And you might also learn how to do your own cooking and all of the above. But we have a limited resource as humans. That limited resource could be money, that could be time, but we are limited, and because of that, sometimes it's better to sort of delegate some of that decision making to people that truly like that area, and because they like that area, they're more likely to do things better than we would, and so we sort of delegate that ability delegate that knowledge area to them and let them make the decisions, and we sort of delegate and trust them in doing that. And experts, I think, are fundamental to a working society, an efficient, complex society, because of all the different knowledge areas. Let's say, let's take ourselves back to when we were hunter-gatherers, right? Maybe the knowledge of the tribe could be within one person, and someone might be the expert in everything. But now we have so many niche knowledge areas that it's not feasible for one person to be the expert in everything. And even if they could, they might be better at some selective areas and delegate that to other people. So that ability to sort of specialize between people allows for an efficient, complex, modern society. But the erosion of trust is an issue, because when we are delegating decisions to other people, say doctors, politicians, scientists, we need to be able to trust what they say about it. So why is there a decline in trust then? I don't think I can give a definitive answer, and I don't think anyone really can give a definitive answer at this moment, as we're still struggling through this. However, I've taken some thoughts into this, and I think that there are three aspects of information and how that is shared where we can improve our trust in experts. The three ways I'm talking about are the ways that transparency in information that is shared, the ability to understand the readability of the information that is shared, and also the receptibility of that information to people. So the first part about that transparency is the idea that all relevant information should be shared to the public as much as possible, and not try to hide things away where you could where a malicious actor could hide some credentials or hide some important knowledge areas to manipulate other people from that higher authority. That delegated trust can be an issue when someone takes that delegated trust and does things that would benefit themselves but hurt other people that gave them that trust. So with more transparency, then they would be more accountable, and then with that accountability, then they would have a less of a benefit from manipulating people, because then they would be more easily found out and they would face repercussions from that. So that transparency of information, I feel like, is an important step to trust. But not only that, the information that is shared should be readable, as in it shouldn't be filled with political jargon or just industry-specific jargon or some vocabulary that makes it sort of vague or something like that. What I'm talking about is information that should be understandable, and the public should be able to read that information. Because even if that information is public, if no one's able to understand it, then that information loses its value, and there's not that much transparency there, even if the information is there for you to see. So being able to process that information, that is both on the side of the people that share it. They should I feel like they should make an effort to be able to have people understand it, but also on the side of us that consume the information, to do our due diligence to understand it, to be doing our research to make sure that we aren't misunderstanding the information that is brought out. We have a responsibility in making sure we understand what information is out there. And the third and final part is the receptibility of the information. And this part is much more on the side of the consumers of the information. And I'm talking about the ability for someone to take that information and accept it. It's very difficult for someone with a differing view than what the expert says to accept that information that they give. Or you might have a worldview that is incompatible with some of the evidence that is provided. But the ability to, I feel like the ability to sort of open yourself to change and allow that information to come in, even if you might not agree with it, but just to simply acknowledge its existence is an important step for that information percolate throughout the population. Because even if that information is readily available and people can understand it, if no one's willing to accept it, then it also loses its value and the trust is no longer there. So those are some aspects I feel like could be improved in society. And whether or not we can really act upon that, that's up to us, but I feel like that if we are starting to think about this, then at least we'll be conscious and we might be able to make some micro adjustments that over time amount to something that could be a social change, or at least a personal change in a way that can improve you for the better in the long term. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate the support that you all have given me throughout this process. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down in the comments section on the YouTube video down below. I appreciate the support that you all have given me. If you found this episode to be insightful, I would be so grateful if you shared this with your friends and your colleagues. Take care, stay humble, and I will see you all in the next episode.